preparation for the project, which is the first step in the environmental review process. I want to talk a little bit about our communications and outreach engagement and how we're connecting with the community and stakeholders in relation to the project and how we can get their input as a component of environmental review. I want to spend a little time talking specifically about our efforts around the Hayward station. It's the South Bay Connect project's impact on the current Hayward station and some of the analysis that we've done on other potential locations and the possibilities for the future in Hayward going forward. And then, as I said, I'm happy to take any and all of your questions going forward. Next slide. Again, please. As Mr. Kelly pointed out, the South Bay Connect project is a relocation of existing Capital Corridor service from Sacramento to San Jose, from the Niles Rail Subdivision to the Coast Subdivision. One of the outcomes includes a reduction in travel time of up to 13 minutes, and it will facilitate the improved separation between passenger rail and freight rail and accommodate the operation of freight rail along the Niles subdivision to the Central Valley, which is one of the primary targets for Union Pacific freight operations. And a component of the shift of passenger service to the Coast subdivision includes the development of a new train station along the Coast subdivision with connections to Transbay bus service and other shuttle services to expand the modal connection opportunities that the Capital Corridors might enjoy as part of their current operations. Next slide. Just briefly, an overview of the existing rail lines, all of which are owned and will continue to be owned by Union Pacific Railroad. The blue and orange lines that you see here are the Niles subdivision, which is in blue, the Oakland subdivision in orange that continues to the Central Valley. The green line you see is the Coast subdivision, where we're seeking to move current Capital Corridor passenger service between Oakland and San Jose, shift to that line. You see the potential rail bridge connection over the Dumbarton Rail Bridge, and the Centerville connection, where the current Capital Corridor line operates to connect to the coast on its way to San Jose. Next slide. Just to give you a sense of the rail operations as they are currently, if you could, Mr. Mari, if you could give it one click, please. That's the current route of the Capital Corridor that extends from between Oakland and San Jose. It operates along the Oakland and Niles subdivisions through past Hayward and the Hayward station, through Centerville in Fremont, and then to the Coast subdivision in the south on its way to Santa Clara and San Jose. One more click, please. What you see here is the current freight rail operations along the Coast subdivision, and then moving to the east along the Centerville subdivision into the Central Valley, making their connection. What the South Bay Connect project hopes to do is the following. Next slide, please. One more click. Thank you. So the new Capital Corridor operations will run in a straight line, essentially, between Oakland and San Jose. This allows the reduction in travel time, and as you can see, the proximity to the Dumbarton Rail Corridor, which will be shown in a subsequent map, is a little more proximate to the Coast subdivision line, helping to facilitate that connection. Another click, please, Mr. Amari. And this would be the new proposed freight rail route, facilitating freight rail operations along the Oakland and Niles subdivisions. And this will include improvements at Industrial Boulevard and at Shen Junction, improving those connections between the Oakland and Niles subdivisions, allowing freight rail movement to the Central Valley, which is their primary route, primary goal, and simplify those operations, and importantly, separate freight from passenger operations. Next slide. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, the environmental review process has begun, and that began with the publishing of our notice of preparation. That initiates a scoping process of 45 days that extends from June 29th to August 13th. So we will be taking initial public comment on the environmental review process and the scoping process and the project itself during that 45-day period. But I want to stress that that is just the beginning of the input process. Public comment and input will be taken throughout the environmental review process all the way to a draft environmental document. And we're also, importantly, coordinating our efforts with Union Pacific Railroad. As the owner of the rail properties throughout the region, we need to ensure that the operations that we're recommending and that the improvements that are being suggested to accommodate these operations are consistent with Union Pacific operating requirements, and that it allows them to ensure that they're protecting their interests for the operation of freight throughout the region. Next slide. Our environmental process, as you see here, is expected to extend through the fall-winter of 2021. We are currently in the public scoping, as you see here, 45 days, as I mentioned. The draft environmental document is expected to be available in the late fall of 2020, early spring of 2021. And again, we will be in the midst of a full public review and comment period once the draft is completed and made public. And then we'll take the opportunity to respond to those comments, aiming toward a certified environmental document by the end of 2021. Next slide. Thank you. We've endeavored to engage in an extensive communications and engagement program, and with the challenges presented by COVID-19 and the shelter in place, we've, like all organizations, have had to modify our strategies for outreach, the tools that we use for outreach. So, attempting to achieve all of these components that you see on the slide here, to ensure that we are expanding our database of property owners and stakeholders, and that we are reaching out as fully as possible all along the length of the corridor. Establishing a Speakers Bureau where we have Capital Corridor Joint Powers Authority staff as well as members of the consultant team available to answer questions and attend public meetings or engage in public outreach as I'm able to be with you this evening. Establishing community working groups, inviting members of the community all along the corridor to give us their input and participate actively as part of our environmental review process. As I've mentioned, we've had to adapt our outreach approach in the wake of COVID, and we have begun, in fact, last week we were able to have our first live chat, which provided an opportunity for people to write in their questions in real time and have members of the South Bay Connect team answer those questions in real time. And that was last Wednesday. And that evening we had a telephone town hall that gave folks the opportunity to call in, and it was a moderated call-in session where staff was available to directly answer questions and take public comment from members of the community that wanted to let us know what their feelings were on South Bay Connect. And we are planning a second session, both live chat and telephone town hall, on August 5th, and that will be announced broadly as well. But that entire effort will be ongoing, and it will be supplemented by the tools you see here: email blasts, ongoing public meetings, social media and media relations opportunities to provide as much information and opportunities for public input on the project going forward, as well as providing background materials on the project to just better inform community stakeholders and the public as much as possible. Next slide. Next slide, please. So our overall project schedule is, as you see here, we're in the midst of the environmental review project, the environmental review process, the notice of preparation, and the environmental review and final environmental review moving toward the end of 2021, and then initiating the design process, all the way to full design, which is expected in late 2023, and construction beginning in early 2024 through 2026 for the improvements that are identified as a component of the project within the environmental review. Next slide. One more. Thank you. As Fred mentioned, we have spent some time focusing on Hayward station options, and that began with our project definition report, which is available on the South Bay Connect website. You are certainly welcome to review the analysis that went into reviewing the stations, and initially that included a look at the State Route 92 at Clawwater Station, the former Gillig and Berkeley Farms properties as a potential location and connection to State Route 92 to facilitate that east-west connection that the project is attempting to make. We also looked at State Route 84 at the Ardenwood Park and Ride and connecting with the buses that currently serve the Park and Ride, and at Ardenwood, we looked at the possibility of a Newark Junction station, which is the rail confluence right at the end of what would be the reconstructed Dumbarton Rail Bridge. So as the Dumbarton Bridge comes over, it connects at a rail junction where the Altamont Corridor Express passes by, the Capital Corridor on the Coast Subdivision would operate, potentially a Dumbarton extension from the peninsula, connecting folks to those jobs on the peninsula, and eventually, as systems are developed statewide, the extension of what would be the Valley Link or the Altamont Corridor Express extension to the East Bay. And in that sense, it's important to remember that the South Bay Connect project is just one piece of what really has been identified as a component of the state rail plan, the overall state rail plan, where that includes projects like Valley Link and Caltrain electrification and future high-speed rail and expansions of the Capital Corridor system and so on. These are all pieces of the much larger state rail plan puzzle. And then most recently, we also worked with, as Mr. Kelly pointed out, worked with Mr. Kelly and staff from the city of Union City on the potential of a station location at Whipple Road, looking toward the connections to the future improved Whipple Road interchange and providing access to a station that might function there, being supported by some of the residential facilities that are nearby Whipple at Union City Boulevard at that location. So we gave that a very serious look as well. The evaluation criteria that we've used in looking at all of these station locations include what you see here, looking at benefits that are identified in the TIRSIP grant, the state grant that has provided a lion's share of the funding for the South Bay Connect project, looking at design feasibility and the ability to put a station in a particular location on the Coast Subdivision, looking at the very real environmental impacts to the surrounding community that takes in all of the elements that are currently under review and that will be under review for the next year: noise, air quality impacts, traffic, and so on, all a component of that. And then looking at the surrounding station area itself, and looking at its future potential, both current possibilities and future potential for increased densities, easier access, giving it the opportunity to really grow as a station location. So in looking at all of these station locations, it's important to remember that any station location that's identified as part of South Bay Connect won't preclude our ability to pursue future station developments along the Coast Subdivision in the future. So while a particular station location may be identified initially for the current environmental review and initial operation of the Capital Corridor on the Coast Subdivision, that doesn't preclude us, as service develops and grows, to pursue the location of another station along the corridor. Next slide. So where we are now, we're in the midst of public communication and outreach, and I'm very happy to be with you this evening to have the opportunity to talk about this. We will work for the next roughly year to, as the schedule pointed out, to complete the environmental draft and finalize the details of the project scope. And this includes working, as I mentioned, with Union Pacific to get their perspective on what the rail lines should look like. And that coordination with UP will be ongoing throughout the development of the project. I think that's our last slide, if I'm not mistaken.
That's the last one.
Yeah, it is. So that's a brief overview. As I mentioned, I am very happy to answer any questions that you might have about the project.
You're on mute, Mayor.
Madam City Clerk, do we have any public comments on this item?
Yes, Madam Mayor. We have 3 speakers, and I'll be happy to transfer them. One moment, please.
All right.
Please go ahead. You're on the air.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Jian Zhang. So thank you for letting me speaking. I have some objections about the South Bay connection project here. So I think there are a few reasons that I think the project doesn't really stand. So the first one is in the information of the first slide of the PowerPoint there. So we still mentioned the Dumbarton Rail Corridor project there. As far as I know, the project is dead. It's not going to happen. I think the information not updated yet. I think if we don't have that project, and if we try to direct people through the current 84 highway there, the highway is already very crowded. I think it's really hard to make it working. And the second one is, I think, with this special COVID virus area here, I think people's lifestyle is changing. So a lot of people start working from home. So it's questionable how much necessary we need for this new project there. So because most people work from home, and this can be the new trend there. And the third one is from the analysis there, it seems that we want to, this project is going to bring like 520 more people in 5 years on this new road. Let's say even we don't have the coronavirus stuff there, we can achieve this goal there. This seems like a really small achievement according to we spend like a quarter $250 million to achieve this one. It's just not that cost efficient. And a different one also, it's going to interrupt a lot of people's life. The new train become a lot more frequent in the new line there. So a lot of neighborhood live along the track there. Their life is going to be affected a lot. I think based on all those information there, I really think this project doesn't make sense. Maybe not even worth to go into the EIR study part, because the EIR study is going to spend a lot of money, maybe a few $1 million, as far as I know there. It's kind of like a waste there. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam City Clerk, go ahead and put the next caller on.
Please go ahead. You're on the air. Hello? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yes.
Hello?
Please go ahead.
Go ahead. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Jeff Liu. Thanks for the opportunity to voice my concern here. And I just want to do, I think I've heard a lot. I also did a little research on the project itself over their website.
So I just give you a couple of numbers for you guys to think of, right? Number one is we do 5. So I just come across one research paper published by Harvard on Science. They said COVID-19 very likely going to stay with us until 2026. That's 6 years or 5 years from now. So the project I think the project plan started last year. So maybe a little earlier, but with the COVID-19 impact, the new norm, everything else, social distancing, I think the ridership or whatever the project based on needed to be rebased or reconsidered. I just want to raise this concern to you guys. The second number is 5 to 0. On their website, any project should have pros and cons, right? So far, I do not see any cons. All pros. Pros and cons, right? We need to open up to everybody and say, hey, this project will have a benefits or also have some negative impact. That's for sure, right? So we need to make sure this is a project being done or research being done unbiased, right? So the other number I want to do, somebody already said that, but I just give you another number real quick. So for the ridership, last year statistics says the average ridership on 6 at the evening in Fremont Station, 116 on Hayward Station. So this number is really low. I'm not sure how valuable this project can be, how this project can bring the benefits to the local residents here. For the ridership, what we have now, the number actually from South Bay Connect project information, they provide this number. So for that being said, I think this project needs to be reconsidered. For now, I think at least we'll postpone that because the COVID-19, the uncertainty of the future, people work from home. I've been working from home so many days, so I don't even know when I can go to work. So you got to go to trains, you take trains, you have making sure you have a social distance. Maybe you have a lot of meditation you need to do. We're talking about $264 million. How many we need to add more to meditate all the, noises you created, congestion you created, all that stuff we don't even know. So please consider we can postpone, at least stop doing EIR now, right? There's another $1 million, $10 million to spend.
Okay.
All right, with that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry. Okay, sorry. I'm learning how to work my timer here. But thank you for the comments. Madam City Clerk, do we have other comments?
Madam Mayor, Mr. Louis was the last speaker for this item.
Okay. Okay. I thought I had heard you say that we had 3, but okay.
Correct. The third person was disconnected, unfortunately.
All right. So once again, if they happen to call back, let us know. I'm going to start this one off because I have been. I was involved in the discussions that our staff has had with the Capitol Corridor people about the possibility of a Hayward station in the west side. But I really have not been in favor of this project since I first heard about it. And I think that was like about 2 years ago, maybe, that we started having these meetings. To hear about the project, I think since then they have gotten a state grant. I think based on the email that we got today and some other things that I've heard, and I've also discussed this with some of the other mayors of Alameda County along this corridor, the opposition to this project is gathering steam. And I wanted to ask staff, is your expectation coming out of this that we would write a letter as a city, from the city, as part of this scoping period?
Mayor Halliday, that's entirely within the purview of the city to do so. And I am aware that Union City and San Leandro were also hoping to prepare a joint letter for submittal. So
thank you. We're in the environmental process on this project, and when you think about the environmental, the environmental barriers in some cases, and also detrimental environmental effects that could come. First of all, the coastal route goes through our wetlands. I mean, it goes through the area that we are now, looking at to protect from sea level rise, which is either going to engender, additional extensive costs to counteract that by the people who are building it, or it is going to be vulnerable. And aside from that, it will eliminate major stations in Alameda County, in the East Bay, here in Alameda County, particularly in Union City, Hayward, and I believe Fremont as well, and that are PDAs, priority development areas right now. Our Cannery area was built as a it was built as a redevelopment project, but it is a PDA now. It is connected to other transportation sources. BART, it's not that far. I have walked the distance. And in Union City, it's even more significant that it will not be part of their major transit hub that they are constructing around the Union City BART station. So it's going to bring, I think actually, when you think about it, freight is much more appropriate to go up that coastal route, since it goes through a lot of our industrial area, and I just think to take major stations in Alameda County out of this, to take them out of this capital corridor, to eliminate them altogether and build a very car-oriented project that will, require people to drive and park at the station if they want to use it from here, is not very environmental. And I think that, I also, one of the commenters was commented on the fact that we don't know coming out of COVID what, ridership numbers are going to be in general. Also, the funding for this project is an enormous amount of money that I do think could be better spent doing other things that actually fit in with our efforts as a region to build transit-rich, higher density developments. We've been a big part of that in Hayward, and this is just kind of taking what we have now as a transit, amenity and one of our major PDAs, very adjacent to the downtown, of course, too, which is another PDA. And just eliminating it and putting this line through what basically is wetlands area. So I just wanted to, I don't usually speak first, but because I've been following this project for a while, I wanted to do that tonight. So I'm going to turn this over now to Councilmember Salinas for comments.
Mayor Halliday, my apologies for interrupting.
Yes.
The public speaker called back, and now the person is on hold. Would you like me to release that person?
All right. We will reopen public comments on this before we go to Councilmember Salinas and entertain the public speaker.
All right. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Could you please mute your device? You're all, yeah. Yes. Thank you. Now you are live. Go ahead.
Hi. Thanks for the opportunity to speak online. My name is Lily Zhang. I'm a resident in Fremont. So with this project currently ongoing, am I talking? Yeah, with this project currently planning to be ongoing, there are a few concerns to be a resident of the Fremont, especially people. My house or many other people's house live next to the railway. I believe a majority of people that are from this project have lived near the railway, haven't had experience on how suffering daily life would be if you imagine that you have trains pass through your house every day. By increasing the amount of numbers of trains, if this project is passing through, that means we're going to have a 24/7 trains passing through from our house every day. We're not talking about making any noise and there's a blowing horns through this long way distance. We're also talking about the vibrations of the entire house every time there are trains passing through. So this is just the personal experience that I'm sure not just myself, there's many people will be impacted by this project for sure in our daily lives as well. And also think about our elder peoples and our younger generations who are going to be probably playing around and just kind of hearing the rail train noise every day. That's a little bit of frustration for our lives as well. And I hope people kind of can understand our situation, how frustrated this would be. I believe this will be the issue putting down for the environmental concerns as well. And another thing that my question would be, the current railway that you're planning to use for your South Bay Connect. So this is just a one-way rail. How are you planning to do such a frequent passenger trains passing through just with a one-way rail per daily life? And what about the current commercial trains? How are you planning to schedule all those current trains ongoing? Is there a lot of conflictions as well? Is this going to causing a lot of traffic jams at certain areas as well? So that would be the certain concerns that I'm having. Thank you.
Thank you. And there, Madam City Clerk, I understand there are no further callers?
That's correct, Mayor.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and go back to Councilmember Salinas.
Thank you. So, I just wanted to thank the mayor for her comments at the beginning of this item. And, I want to also share the concerns that the callers have brought in. And I think, the fact that, all the mayors and I don't know about other council members, but I'm assuming other council members in neighboring cities would, I'm just assuming that they would also feel similar to what their other elected colleagues are thinking. But, my concern as I was reading this report, and even when I was listening to the presenter and I was looking at the timeline, I guess for me, my concern is at what point will this project stop? At what point will need to, or at what threshold, or what is the threshold, I should say, that neighborhoods or even electeds or even the mayors, at what point or what's the threshold that needs to take place or needs to happen for this project to stop? And because what I don't want is the same thing that happened about the power plant. If you ask everyone, around town about the power plant, everyone says, well, we didn't want it. We tried to stop it. And, but we got a power plant. It just seemed like it just kept moving. And so, I don't want to feel powerless. I don't want the neighborhoods to feel powerless. And so my question is, are we just banging our fists empty on a table? Or is there a threshold where the neighborhoods will be heard and this could actually stop? Madam Mayor, you don't have to answer this. Maybe Alex or.
Well, we're in the environmental process now, and there are a whole bunch of agencies involved. MTC, I believe, is the ultimate. Is the ultimate project sponsor that would authorize the funding. Is that correct?
The funding, Madam Mayor, that we have today is from state, local and regional grants. As the memo pointed out, the TIRSIP grant provided a significant amount of funding. There are RM3 funds and Measure BB funds, county funds, that are a component of the project to this point. And you're exactly right. The place where we are now is an opportunity to identify all of the challenges and opportunities that the project has, the benefits that it would in fact provide by improving operations, rail operations, regional rail operations as a component of the overall statewide network that we're seeking to improve region-wide, as well as identify the specific impacts on surrounding neighborhoods, on businesses, on communities all along the rail line, and the trade-offs that will occur and the mitigations that will have to occur to address those impacts. That's what this effort through the middle of next year to get to a draft will provide us, an opportunity to get a full accounting and understanding of what the impacts of this project of swapping the freight for the passenger service in the coast subdivision, determining the shift in the hours of operation and how those will impact surrounding communities and the entire corridor between Oakland and San Jose, and really how to address those. So the opportunity for input that you're engaged in here and that we will have throughout this environmental process gives us a chance to improve the project, to address those community concerns, to respond to them as much as possible, to modify the project if necessary in ways that can address some of those concerns. And that's what the breadth of environmental review will give us an opportunity to do. At the end of the day, all of the comments that that you all are providing today and will continue to provide, any communications to the project between now and a final environmental document, will all become part of the record in the development of the project.
Okay, thank you.
So let me just follow up, and I'm sorry, sir. How do you pronounce your last name? Is it Tiposis?
Trebosis.
Trebose. Okay, I apologize, Mr.
Okay.
Trebose. So what you said is fine, and I get that. But what if the neighborhoods along this corridor? What if they're not interested in tweaking the project, or adjusting it, or they just outright don't want it? And so it goes back to my question: at what is that threshold where ACT just says, okay, we give up, we're not going to do this?
Mm-hmm. It's MTC.
MTC. I'm sorry, MTC.
Yeah, I certainly can't speak for the policymakers and the commissioners at MTC, but what I will say is that the genesis of the project is aimed at improving transportation in the region and improving transportation opportunities for all the communities and our residents in the region. That's why it was initiated. That's the goal we're trying to achieve. So in trying to achieve that, yes, there will likely be impacts. Yes, there are trade-offs. The goal through this environmental process is try to address those so that they function for the community and allow the project to move forward and function as well. And really, this is an experience that we have in virtually every transportation project, as you know, whether we're talking about a rail project or a freeway project or roadway improvements or a whole host of community-wide improvements, and especially with rail, because rail right-of-way has been built up to its edges in most communities throughout California. Trying to expand or improve the system within existing communities is extremely challenging.
Okay.
And historically, I feel that sometimes, when I say historically, I'm not going back to the turn of the 20th century, but historically, rail, my experience has been, they don't necessarily listen to neighborhoods. And, when we, even when we, call for very basic things, they don't respond to us. But anyways, I'll yield my time, but I will be, if you do go and collect, feedback and engage the community, I hope that you're engaging in the very specific neighborhoods that this line will cut through. And, looking at, Eden Shore, all of West Hayward, right? The Mount Eden area and Eden Shores area, and then through Union City, the Smith Street down Union City Boulevard and Ardenwood. But anyways, I thank you for the presentation. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Lamnon?
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Mayor and Councilmember Salinas, for your comments, because I concur. I have some significant concerns about this project. And that doesn't make your job easier, sir, but that's kind of not what we're here for. The genuine input is that, I think one of the options on the table has to be not doing this project. The other option that I'm not hearing talked about, and maybe it was earlier, so feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, is looking at the timing of the trains. I mean, I'll speak just for me. I would love to use the trains more. I absolutely believe in the importance of rail as a key component of getting people out of their cars and improving transportation options and environmental impacts and all of the things that that this project is intended to do. I believe in those values, but I can't use the rail because the trains don't run into Hayward. They don't stop in Hayward on a schedule that works for me to be able to get back and forth to Sacramento, for instance, when I need to get there. And so really looking at the schedule of the trains feels like the first step. And the other piece of that that's really critical is the interconnectivity with BART. I think some of the public comment folks have mentioned this too. It's fine if, rail is, as was mentioned, a regional option. And so, much like needing to go to the airport, I want a station in Hayward. Let's not kid ourselves. But if I have to go to Oakland, then give me the station that that connects to BART, so that I don't have to drive to that station, because if I'm in my car, I'm probably going to stay there. Often the trains, you get the option of Jack London Square, which isn't connected to any other transportation. Coliseum is. So I think those are things that really have to be looked at. The other thing is whether or not the Dunbarton rail line is really going to happen. And do you want to speak briefly to how likely that project is to come to fruition?
Well, I don't have a great deal of detail on the Dunbarton Rail project. I will say that it is still in operation. It's still moving forward. Our expectation is that there will be a rail service developed in the rail corridor. A replacement of the bridge is being developed, and future rail service of some sort is expected to evolve in the Dunbarton Rail Corridor. Part of the goal here with the South Bay Connect project is to connect efficiently in the near term with the existing bus services, and that's why in the initial analysis, the Ardenwood location at State Route 84 at the park and ride lot rose to the top is because of the opportunity to make that connection with those buses. Much of our initial ridership analysis shows regional travelers from as far away as Sacramento taking the Capital service to the park and ride lot, transferring to a bus to get to the jobs on the peninsula, that the movement is much more toward the west than it is from the south to the north in that case. So that's part of the connection that's attempting to be made. In the future, a Dunbarton rail connection would allow for an improved connection to both the Capital service and eventually, again, referring to the state rail plan, the Altamont Corridor Express, or the extension of the Valley Link potentially through into the East Bay. I will, to answer the one point that you did make, part of the environmental analysis that we're putting together here will include a no-build option. That there will be a fundamental no-build and then alternatives, either one, likely one, perhaps more as we go through the analysis, but there will certainly be a no-build and an alternative.
Right. That's always part of the process. So I appreciate that reminder. Thank you. And so I think my final points are about the environmental in terms of the shoreline. The idea of maybe putting the station over by SkyWest or something like that, the idea of connecting to Dunbarton Rail makes sense on paper. But in actuality of the given the built environment and the projections of sea level rise, as the mayor mentioned, I'm not sure that it does, honestly. And I think the other piece of that I'm really concerned about is that right now the passenger line tends to run through somewhat of a lower income area than the coastal line. And so you'll probably hear more, just as often happens, from the coastal side, and not necessarily about what the impact of running freight through the 880 corridor side is. And so there's an equity issue already at play that I'm concerned won't get surfaced if what we're relying on is public comment for this, and probably some language barriers as well that you probably already thought about. But yeah, so I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Well, and let me just assure you that part of the analysis absolutely includes an evaluation of impacts to communities of concern and environmental justice communities to ensure that there aren't disproportionate and disparate impacts to those communities. So that's very much front and center in this analysis and part of what we have to determine how best to avoid or mitigate those impacts.
I appreciate that. And the sea level rise makes me think, keeping it more centered, but with the communities of concern that you just raised, balancing those and perhaps looking at the timing may be the way to get to where you want to get to without having to do the project as designed. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Did we have any other council members who wish to comment? Okay, not seeing or...
Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Councilmember Wahab.
Okay, perfect. Well, I want to... You gave me permission, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, you went mute for a second. I want to thank staff primarily for working on this and presenting this. I do have some questions. Primarily, the understanding is that the Hayward station will no longer be, but there's potentially going to be a future site in the works, or no?
I'll defer to Mr. Kelly, but we've reviewed several sites that don't meet, strictly speaking, the criteria at the moment, but it does not preclude us from pursuing a station in the future. As densities increase, as ridership increases, as opportunities for land use at a particular location along the coast subdivision changes, we'd certainly be able to revisit the possibility of another station location.
Okay.
Nothing in this effort precludes us from doing that. Okay.
And when we're talking about rail, and the whole goal is basically to be automotive competitive, if you will, what type of rail are we looking at?
Well, the Capital Corridor is an interregional rail system. So this is more long-distance rail, but it's heavy rail, the most advanced, lowest emission diesel locomotives that are currently available.
Okay. And the goal is to move from, for example, you have on page 5 of the staff report, the picture, the existing Capital Corridor service to the proposed service. Now, how long would that take? And is there anything, or are you building off of something?
No, this would be using all of the existing rail lines. There may be some improvements to accommodate the passenger service that are different from freight service. For example, the coast subdivision rails would have to be improved to a certain federal railroad classification, commonly referred to as a Class 5 railroad, that is just improvements in the rail that allow it to accommodate passenger trains versus freight trains that are very different. So there would be some physical improvements there. There obviously would be the development of a station platform and station connection as currently proposed at Ardenwood, and other modifications that may be requested by Union Pacific as the owner of the facility.
Okay, and please explain, wherever a railroad is stationed, wherever the tracks are, Union Pacific Railroad, it's their jurisdiction. How many feet away from the rail?
They are the property owners. They own the entire width of the railway that usually extends between 60 to 100 feet, depending on the location.
Okay, and I've consistently heard 100 feet. So, and particularly, have we done outreach to the neighbors that would potentially be affected by this new route, if you will?
That's what we're in the process of doing right now. We initiated that with the release of the notice of preparation on June 29th. The initial comment period is 45 days through August 13th, but we will have community outreach and information throughout the entire environmental review process.
Okay. And if the community is opposed to this, what is their course of action? Do they need a certain set of signatures to combat this particular project?
Each community has the opportunity to respond as they see fit, as the leadership sees fit. What initially the notice of preparation and scoping process, and then further on the environmental review process affords local communities is the opportunity to weigh in on the project itself. So that can include any manner of comment, whether it's comment at meetings like this council meeting this evening, official letters from elected bodies, the whole gamut of communication opportunities. What the scoping period and the environmental review process affords is the opportunity for individuals and communities to weigh in on the project itself.
So that's the traditional weigh in, right? You know, for example, we as the city of Hayward have public comments, but in regards to this project, you know, for example, if there is a development in the city of Hayward that somebody is opposed to, the threat of legal action against a development can happen and does delay projects and does, let's say, have a little bit more weight than just public comments. So do the residents have an opportunity to do this?
Well, if I'm understanding your question correctly, Council Member, the agency moving this project forward is the Capital Corridor Joint Powers Authority. So the development of the project rests with CCJPA and staff and their board and leadership. So in terms of direct comments to the sponsor of the project, it would be to the Capital Corridor Joint Powers Authority. Okay.
And to move on, I personally, you know, I would like more competitive measures compared to the automotive industry, but at the same time, how much faster does a person get from one location to another with this new route?
Again, we're talking about shifting the existing service from the current route to the coast route. It initially will cut off roughly between 13 and 15 minutes in between Oakland and San Jose.
Okay. And the only reason why I say this is because I personally drive to San Jose each day and spend about, at minimum, an hour and 15 minutes each way. So roughly about close to nearing 3 hours almost, right? So 15 minutes is and 13 to 15 minutes is not much. The other thing is, what is the price of a ticket to be on this train and move from one location to another? Because I'll be frank, even even the BART tickets are expensive at this point.
Forgive me, council member, I don't have the fare committed to memory. I would imagine it greatly relates to the station that you caught the train on, whether you started in Sacramento or Fairfield and so on. But we would certainly be able to get that information to you.
Okay, so go ahead.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Wahab. I was going to comment that it's definitely more expensive than a BART ride. Councilmember Lambden and I have actually taken students to Sacramento on the Capitol Corridor from the Hayward station. So there are different prices for seniors,
based on stations,
young and But it is more expensive than BART. I think it's about $50 from Hayward to Sacramento.
And that's primarily what I want to kind of focus on. So, the goal, I think, for myself is very much to have alternatives to driving, right? Hence why we have the BART station extended to San Jose. We have, different types of other projects throughout the Bay Area that we're looking at. When we talk about, let's say the bullet train, right? That has never happened. And you compare us to other countries and other metropolitan areas. I do not believe that this is an investment worth our time. It is not transformational in my personal opinion. And when I talk about transformational, I want almost completely green trains, whether it's electric or solar powered and so forth. And we have so many companies that could potentially invest in something like this. And if we were to really reimagine what we want in our transportation options, that's something that I would consider, right? I agree with the mayor that it is incredibly close to our shoreline. And as much as I'm not a supporter of NIMBYism, but many of the residents that have called, emailed, and commented on this particular item, stating that they've purchased their home, they don't know how the impacts are going to be. It's going to be more negative. And in the staff report, it specifically says on the sustainability features that this project will reduce regional carbon and greenhouse gas emissions and vehicle miles traveled within the region. However, the usage of the current train is not very high, as was mentioned in the staff report. Also, if I were to consider and compare me driving to San Jose versus me taking the train, I would not really think that 13 to 15 minutes is a significant impact to my day, if you will. So I have multiple concerns about this. And granted, I would love to support a big infrastructure change like this. But like I said, this is not transformational. And I hesitate to even waste money on this if that's the case, because this doesn't make a significant impact that's positive to not only the riders, but then also the existing neighborhood and the environment. So I'm not that supportive of this project, to be quite frank.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Marquez, did you want to weigh in on this?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I appreciate all the comments made by my colleagues, including the mayor leading us in the discussion. I remember hearing bits and pieces of this project back when I was a planning commissioner, and the threat of us losing our station located near Burbank Elementary School. So I've always felt since then that we haven't done a really good job with publicizing that station. I've tried to take advantage of it. Unfortunately, I haven't had a good experience trying to get to Dearborn and downtown San Jose. It took way too long and it was very expensive. And this was probably 3 or 4 years ago. I gave it about 4 or 5 chances. And then after that, I just couldn't see doing it again. Parking is limited. So I'm very concerned about the environmental impacts. We're working on our our shoreline master plan right now. And as the mayor said, if we do move forward with this, this is going to further impact that area. And if it is allowed to move forward, it's going to be very costly to protect that land. I'm very mindful of the communities that it's going to impact as well in terms of pollution and noise. I live very close to railroad track. I've lived here my entire life, so I'm used to it. So I definitely feel for the communities that aren't being impacted now, but potentially can be. So I think in order for this to even proceed, I understand the community outreach. I am worried about language barriers and just access to this information given everything that we're doing with COVID. So I have severe reservations, and because of that, I would strongly encourage our mayor to work along with mayors of Union City and San Leandro to write a joint letter of opposition and concern. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I'd be happy to do that, or actually maybe just, I have been in discussions with them, so we may do that. And I think maybe we might want to write our own letter based on this discussion. And, I have one more question, and that's, you mentioned the RM3, Regional Measure 3 money that increased the toll, increased bridge tolls to fund projects. When that was put before the voters, was this project listed as one of the projects that would be supported by it?
I could check with CCJPA staff. I don't have that at the ready, Madam Mayor, but my understanding was yes, but I can confirm that for you. Because, I just, I'm not sure it was specific. It was real specifically described at that time, and I just feel that this is not looking at the overall picture of development and transportation in our region, and it really it gives people getting on the train in San Jose a much higher priority than people living in Alameda County. So I will. I appreciate all the comments I do appreciate your coming and presenting it, and thank you for having me.
Would encourage everyone who might be watching tonight to send their thoughts. In fact, I think that I would like to, tomorrow night at our regular meeting, when we most likely will be having more people tune in, I would like to make a public comment about the fact that we had this work session this evening, and perhaps have a slide ready to put up where people can send comments on this, and watch our meeting tonight and send comments, and keep it tuned in to this process. But with that, we will move on. Thank you everybody for your participation. Did you have any
Madam
final?
Mayor,
Go ahead.
Just in closing, if I could say, if there are any other segments of the community that you'd like us to reach out to, if there's anyone else that we need to be in front of or communicate with, certainly making them aware of our website and the other ways of providing public comment is great. But if there are parts of the community that you'd like us to reach out to, please let us know.
I think that one is that I can think of is our cannery area, which is adjacent to the current station, because I know there are people in that community that take that commute on this train. So,
Mayor, I would also like to add another group as well.
Sure.
One, I do believe, hopefully, that people are speaking to the Sierra Club and then the Friends of the San Lorenzo Creek, who would have a vested interest in the shoreline and potential future projects.
Great ideas. I think staff captured that. Okay. All right. So with that, that brings us to adjournment until tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock, unless anyone else has anything they want to say at this point. Seeing no one, we are adjourned to tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
How about